In the second part of the rocks tutorial, we are applying our analysis to painting a rock formation sprite for an imaginary video game project. I'm going to design these with a side-scrolling action RPG in mind, inspired by the work of Vanillaware. For the most part, painting background assets for a 2D game is just regular painting work, with some added constraints though. First, you have to keep the camera in mind. Then, as a consequence, you often have to flatten your sprites a bit compared to an illustration. You have to limit their volume and their value range. Last but not least, you have to paint the right amount of details so your rocks both feel rich and stay behind the gameplay assets. It's a whole balancing act. This tutorial demonstrates an exercise, a study from a game artist's standpoint. If you are working for an actual game, you will most likely always paint new assets directly on top of your game world. As an exercise, however, it's different. If you are exploring a specific element of nature, like clouds or trees, you really want to focus on it in isolation. That's what we are going to do here. So let's jump onto the painting process. Before you start sketching, I invite you to tone your canvas so it simulates your final game's environment. As I explained on the tutorials on colors, color contrast is relative. In order to get proper contrast between your assets and their surroundings, you have to paint them in relationship to one another. If you start with a white background, it will not only be harder to pick colors, you will also have to tweak your assets down the line to integrate them in their final environment. Always start with a sketch, be it with outlines or with thick paint. For efficiency's sake, we always work from broad shapes and slowly inch our way down to the details. Game artists have to design assets that fit in a specific environment. Keep it in mind at all times. Don't draw the rocks alone. Draw them with a little bit of ground, a plant or whatnot surrounding them. Design them in relationship with their world. Here, the formation is just sitting on a dull beach, so there are but a few strokes to add. It's important to make multiple possible versions of your rocks. Taller, wider, uniform or wonky ones. Thumbnails take little time to create and they let you find a good composition. You will rarely get the sketch right at the first trial. Try to give yourself at least a few options. For an exercise like that, 3 or 4 is enough. And allow yourself to bounce back between thumbnails. Here, the techniques you use don't matter. It's all about the design. Whatever tool works for you is good. At this very point, you are wearing a concept artist hat. You have to think in terms of shapes, of forms. Ideally, you want to visualize your final rocks in front of you, if you can, and you want to conform your sketches to that mental image. In Krita, I really like to use the cage and 3D rotation transforms to that end. Out of these thumbnails, I'm selecting 2 sketches to refine. I'm going to detail them a bit before I pick a final composition. You can see that at that stage, I'm using the outline selection tool along with the transforms quite a lot. It's a good occasion to use the M key to mirror the canvas. That is one of the best ways to ensure that your sketch is balanced. It is now time to draw our silhouettes. I select an opaque brush and activate the weighted smoothing in the tool options. This helps me to draw a clean and round outline. I then fill each layer using the fill tool with a grow selection parameter of 2 to 3 pixels. Working that way will give us precise, completely opaque alpha masks to work with. At that point, I also create a new temporary workspace optimized for the task at hand. I pull the dockers I need the most right next to my painting. I then activate the lock alpha mode and fill every layer with the Alt backspace shortcut to give it a proper base color. Here, my rock composition has a bit of depth to it. This may prove to be too much in-game, depending on the exact perspective of the ground. For that reason, I keep each asset split on its own layer so I can move it down vertically at any point in time. This also allows me to extract individual objects and to turn them into new sprites later on if need be. A quick tip, you can use the Ctrl-Alt-S combination to save a new numbered version of your file. Incremental saves are very important in case you want to reuse older versions of your sprites. It's now time to have fun. At last, we can start shading our rock. For that, I am a big fan of the Color Smudge brush engine. This one allows you to both shade your assets and to mix existing colors at the same time. It is very good for edge control as it allows you to nudge light and shadow shapes around. It breathes a lovely, painterly quality into your artwork. It has one limitation though. It cannot simulate a dry paint mixing effect, so your paint will always feel a little bit moist or wet. In Krita, the brush preset icons indicate which engine a given brush uses. Any icon with blue or pink or purple colors use the Color Smudge engine. I'm mostly using the basic round smudge brush you can find at the top of the brush preset panel. While you are painting, be sure to keep the Alpha Lock mode on. This will force Krita to only work with the colors on your layer. I'm going to add the shadows first, with a main diffuse light source coming mostly from the top and kind of surrounding the rocks. This kind of enveloping light not only corresponds to what we have seen on the reference pictures, it allows the level designers to flip the assets horizontally in the level editor. If the lighting is too directional, this becomes impossible. You'll notice one thing as I am painting. My colors are very dull. This is due to two reasons. For one, I was working at night with low screen light to avoid hurting my eyes. But I also start with a low contrast because, remember, this is an environment asset. If there is too much contrast at first, it will take extra manual work to pull the values and colors down later. However, it just takes a few filters to add contrast to a dull image. According to the light source I chose, I am mostly adding shadows where the rocks are somewhat facing towards the ground and in areas of close proximity. I'm applying what 2D artists commonly call ambient occlusion. That is to say, I'm darkening areas light can hardly reach because it tends to get lost between two touching objects. And by doing that, I am treating the rock formation as a single entity, as a whole block. Doing this with separate layers can be a real pain, but that's very important. The rock formation here is one asset, one game sprite. Even though I can reuse parts of it later to create other sprites, this one is a single object and I am treating it as such. So try to keep that in mind and to shade your composition accordingly. You have to fade objects a bit into one another to maintain a close visual bond between them. That's it for this second part. You will get the third part next week, where we get to polish and apply some compositing techniques to our painting. If you want to go further, I'm working on a video training called Game Art Quest. This premium series will teach you how to create professional 2D game art with Krita. It was successfully funded on Kickstarter in less than 10 days. We are now working towards the first stretch goal, a second training series for every backer. You want to become a better game artist? Check out Game Art Quest on Kickstarter now. That said, I want to thank you kindly for watching. Be creative, have fun. Until next time.